then took the limp, seeing hand to guide it forward. Say something to him. Better not do the condescending. They mistrust what you tell them. Pass a common remark. The rain kept off. No answer. Stains on his coat. Slobbers his food, I suppose. Tastes all different for him. Have to be spoon-fed first. Like a child's hand, his hand. Like Millie's was. Sensitive. Sizing me up, I dare say, from my hand. Wonder if he has a name. Van. Keep his cane clear of the horse's legs. Tired drudge, get his doze. That's right. Clear. Behind a bull, in front of a horse. Thanks, sir. Knows I'm a man. Voice. Right now? First turn to the left. The blind stripling tapped the curbstone and went on his way, drawing his cane back, feeling again. Mr. Bloom walked behind the eyeless feet, a flat-cut suit of herringbone tweed. Poor young fellow. How on earth did he know that Van was there? Must have felt it. See things in their forehead, perhaps. Kind of sense of volume. Weight or size of it. Something blacker than the dark. Wonder would he feel it if something was removed? Feel a gap. Queer idea of Dublin he must have, tapping his way round by the stones. Could he walk in a beeline if he hadn't had that cane? Bloodless, pious face like a fellow going in to be a priest. Penrose, that was that chap's name. Look at all the things they can learn to do. Read with their fingers, tune pianos. Or we are surprised they have any brains. Why we think a deformed person or a hunchback clever if he says something we might say. Of course, the other senses are more. Embroider, plate baskets. People ought to help. Work basket I could buy for Molly's birthday. Hates sewing, might take an objection. Dark men, they call them. Sense of smell must be stronger too. Smells on all sides bunched together. Each street different smell. Each person too. Then the spring, the summer, smells, tastes. They say you can't taste wines with your eyes shut or a cold in the head. Also, smoke in the dark, they say, get no pleasure. And with a woman, for instance, more shameless not seeing. That girl passing the Stewart Institution, head in the air. Look at me, I have them all on. Must be strange not to see her, kind of a form in his mind's eye. The voice, temperatures, when he touches her with his fingers, must almost see the lines, the curves. His hands on her hair, for instance. Say it was black, for instance. Good, we call it black. Then passing over her white skin, different feel, perhaps, feeling of white. Post office, must answer. Fag today. Send her a postal order, 2 shillings, half a crown. Accept my little present. Stationer's just here too. Wait, think over it. With a gentle finger, he felt ever so slowly the hair combed back above his ears. Again, fibers of fine straw. Then gently his finger felt the smooth of his right cheek. Downy hair there too, not smooth enough. The belly is the smoothest, no one about. There he goes into Frederick Street. Perhaps to Levinston's Dancing Academy piano. Might be settling my braces. Walking by Doran's public house, he slid his hand between his waistcoat and trousers, and pulling aside his shirt gently, felt a slack fold of his belly. But I know it's whitey yellow. Want to try in the dark to see. He withdrew his hand and pulled his dress too. Poor fellow, quite a boy, terrible, really terrible. What dreams would he have, not seeing? Life a dream for him? Where's the justice being born that way? All those women and children, excursion, bean feast, burned and drowned in New York. Holocaust. Karma, they call that, transmigration for sins you did in the past life. The reincarnation met him pike hoses. Dear, dear, dear. Pity, of course, but somehow you can't cotton on to them some way. Sir Frederick Falconer going into the Freemasons' Hall, solemn as Troy. After his good lunch in Earlsfort Terrace, old legal cronies cracking a magnum, tales of the bench and assizes and annals of the Bluecoat School. I sentenced him to 10 years. I suppose he'd turn up his nose at that stuff I drank. Vintage wine for them. The year marked on a dusty bottle. Has his own ideas of justice in the recorder's court. Well-meaning old man. Police charge sheets crammed with cases. Get their percentage manufacturing crime. Sends them to the right-about. The devil on moneylenders. Gave Reuben J. a great straw calling. Now he's really what they call a dirty Jew. Power those judges have. Crusty old toppers and wigs. Bear with a sore paw. And may the Lord have mercy on your soul. Hello, placard. Merest Bazaar. His Excellency, the Lord Lieutenant. 16th, today it is. In aid of funds for Mercer's Hospital. The Messiah was first given for that. Yes, Handel. What about going out there? Ball's Bridge. Drop in on Keys. No use sticking to him like a leech. Wear out my welcome. Sure to know someone on the gate. Mr. Bloom came to Kildare Street. First I must. Library. Straw hat and sunlight. Tan shoes, turned up trousers. It is. His heart quoped softly. To the right. Museum. Goddesses. He served to the right. Is it? Almost certain. Won't look. Wine in my face. Why did I? Too heady. Yes, it is. The walk. Not see. Get on. Making for the museum gate with long, windy steps, he lifted his eyes. Handsome building. Sir Thomas Deane designed. Not following me? Didn't see me, perhaps, light in his eyes. The flutter of his breath came forth in short sighs. Quick, cold statues. Quiet there. Safe in a minute. No, didn't see me. After 2, just at the gate. My heart. His eyes beating, looked steadfastly at cream curves of stone. Sir Thomas Deane was the Greek architecture. Look for something, I. His hasty hand went quick into a pocket, took out, read, unfolded, Agendath Netime. Where did I? Busy looking, he thrust back quick, Agendath. Afternoon, she said. I'm looking for that. Yes, that. Try all pockets. Hanker, Freeman. Where did I? Ah, yes, trousers, potato, purse. Where? Hurry, walk quietly. Moment more. My heart. His hand looking for the where did I put found in his hip pocket soap lotion, have to call tepid paper stuck. Ah, soap, there I yes. Gate, safe. Urbane, to comfort them, the Quaker librarian purred, and we have we not, those priceless pages of Wilhelm Meister, a great poet on a great brother poet, a hesitating soul taking arms against a sea of troubles, torn by conflicting doubts as one sees in real life. He came a syncopace forward on Neat's leather, creaking, and a step backward, a syncopace on the solemn floor. A noiseless attendant setting open the door but slightly made him a noiseless beck. Directly, said he, creaking to go, albeit lingering. The beautiful, ineffectual dreamer who comes to grief against hard facts, one always feels that Goethe's judgments are so true in the larger analysis. Twice reekingly analysis he corantoed off. Bald, most zealous by the door, he gave his large ear all to the attendant's words, heard them, and was gone. 2 left. Monsieur de la Police, Stephen sneered, was alive 15 minutes before his death. Have you found those 6 brave medicals? John Eglinton asked with elder's gall, to write Paradise Lost at your dictation. The sorrows of Satan, he calls it. Smile Cranley's smile. First he tickled her, then he patted her, then he passed the female catheter, for he was a medical, jolly old Meddy. I feel you would need one more for Hamlet. 7 is dear to the mystic mind. The shining 7, WB calls them. Glitter-eyed, his rufous skull close to his green-capped desk lamp, sought the face bearded amid dark greener shadow, and Olav, holy-eyed. He laughed low, a scissors laugh of Trinity, unanswered. Orchestral Satan, weeping many a road, tears such as angels weep. Ed agli, avia del cul fato trombetta. He holds my follies hostage. Cranley's 11 true Wicklemen to free their sireland. Gap-toothed Kathleen, her 4 beautiful green fields, the stranger in her house. And one more to hail him, Ave Rabbi, and Tinaheli 12. In the shadow of the glen he coos for them. My soul's youth I gave him, night by night. Godspeed, good hunting. Mulligan has my telegram. Folly, persist. Our young Irish bards, John Eglinton censored, have yet to create a figure which the world will set beside Saxon Shakespeare's Hamlet, though I admire him as old Ben did. On this side, idolatry. All these questions are purely academic, Russell oracled out of his shadow. I mean, whether Hamlet is Shakespeare or James I or Essex, clergymen's discussions of the histority of Jesus. Art has to reveal to us ideas, formless spiritual essences. The supreme question about a work of art is out of how deep a life does it spring. The painting of Gustave Moreau is the painting of ideas, the deepest poetry of Shelley. The words of Hamlet bring our minds into contact with the eternal wisdom. Plato's world of ideas. All the rest is speculation of schoolboys for schoolboys. A.E. has been telling some Yankee interviewer, Wall Tarnation strike me. The schoolmen were schoolboys first, Stephen said super politely. Aristotle was once Plato's schoolboy. And has remained so, one should hope, John Eglinton sedately said. One can see him, a model schoolboy with his diploma under his arm. He laughed again at the now smiling bearded face. Formless spiritual Father, Word and Holy Breath, all Father, the heavenly man, Jesus Christos, magician of the beautiful, the Logos who suffers in us at every moment. This verily is that. I am the fire upon the altar. I am the sacrificial butter. Dunlop, Judge, the noblest Roman of them all, A.E. Erival, the name ineffable. In heaven height, K.H., their master, whose identity is no secret to adepts, brothers of the great white lodge, always watching to see if they can help. The Christ with the bride sister, moisture of light, born of an ensouled virgin, repentant Sophia, departed to the plain of booty. The life esoteric is not for ordinary person. O.P. must work off bad karma first. Miss Cooper Oakley once glimpsed our very first illustrious sister, H.P.B.'s elemental. Oh, fie, outnet. Pfui Teufel. You notin' to look, missus, so you notin' when a lady a showin' of her elemental. Mr. Best entered, tall, young, mild, and light. He bore in his hand with grace a notebook, new, large, clean, bright. That model schoolboy, Stephen said, would find Hamlet's musings about the afterlife of his princely soul, the improbable, insignificant, and undramatic monologue as shallow as Plato's. John Eglinton, frowning, said, waxing wroth, "Upon my word, it makes my blood boil to hear anyone compare Aristotle with Plato." "Which of the two," Stephen asked, "would have banished me from his commonwealth?" "Unsheath your dagger definitions. Hoarseness is the whatness of all horse. Streams of tendency and eons they worship. God, noise in the street, very peripatetic. Space, what you damn well have to see. Through spaces smaller than red globules of man's blood, they creepy crawl after Blake's buttocks into eternity, of which this vegetable world is but a shadow. Hold to the now, the here, through which all future plunges to the past." Mr. Best came forward, amiable towards his colleague. "Haynes is gone," he said. "Is he?" "I was showing him Jubenville's book. He's quite enthusiastic, don't you know, about Hyde's love songs of Connacht. I couldn't bring him in to hear the discussion. He's gone to Gill's to buy it. Bound thee forth, my booklet quick, to greet the callous public. Writ, I ween, 'twas not my wish, in lean unlovely English." "The peat smoke is going to his head," John Eglinton opined. "We feel in England, penitent thief, gone. I smoked his baccy, green twinkling stone, an emerald set in the ring of the sea. People do not know how dangerous love songs can be, the auric egg of Russell warned occultly. The movements which work revolutions in the world are born out of the dreams and visions in a peasant's heart on the hillside. For them the earth is not an exploitable ground, but the living mother. The rarefied air of the academy and the arena produced the 6-shilling novel, the music hall song. France produces the finest flower of corruption and Malarm, but the desirable life is revealed only to the poor of heart, the life of Homer's Phæacians." From these words, Mr. Bett turned, on an unoffending face, to Stephen. "Malarm, don't you know," he said, "has written those wonderful prose poems Stephen McKenna used to read to me in Paris. The one about Hamlet. He says, 'Il se promène, lisant un livre de livres.' Don't you know, reading the book of himself, he describes Hamlet given in a French town. Don't you know, a provincial town? They advertised it. His free hand graciously wrote tiny signs in the air. Hamlet utterly distrait, piece de Shakespeare." He repeated to John Eglinton's new-gathered frown, "Piece de Shakespeare. Don't you know? It's so French. The French point of view. Hamlet au—" "The absent-minded beggar," Stephen ended. John Eglinton laughed. "Yes, I suppose it would be," he said. "Excellent people, no doubt, but distressingly short-sighted in some matters. Sumptuous and stagnant exaggeration of murder. A Desmond of the soul, Robert Greene called him," Stephen said. "Not for nothing was he a butcher's son, wielding the sledded poleaxe and spitting in his palms. 9 lives are taken off for his father's one. Our Father, who art in purgatory. Khaki Hamlets don't hesitate to shoot. The blood-boltered shambles in Act 5 is a forecast of the concentration camp sung by Mr. Swinburne. Cranley, I, his mute orderly, following battles from afar. Whelps and dams of murderous foes whom none but we had spared. Between the Saxon smile and Yankee yawp, the devil in the deep sea. He will have it that Hamlet is a ghost story, John Eglinton said for the Mr. Best's behoof. Like the fat boy in Pickwick, he wants to make our flesh creep. List, list, oh list! My flesh hears him creeping, hears, if thou didst ever. What is a ghost? Stephen said with tingling energy. One who has faded into impalpability through death, through absence, through change of manners. Elizabethan London lay as far from Stratford as corrupt Paris lies from virgin Dublin. Who is the ghost from Limbo Patrum? Returning to the world that has forgotten him? Who is King Hamlet? John Eglinton shifted his spare body, leaning back to judge. Lifted. It is this hour of a day in mid-June, Stephen said, begging with a swift glance their hearing. The flag is up on the playhouse by the bankside. The bear Sackerson growls in the pit near it, Paris Garden. Canvas climbers who sailed with Drake chew their sausages among the groundlings. Local color, work in all you know, make them accomplices. Shakespeare has left the Huguenot's house in Silver Street and walks by the Swan Mews along the riverbank. But he does not stay to feed the pen chivying her game of cygnets toward the rushes. The Swan of Avon has other thoughts. Composition a place, Ignatius Loyola, make haste to help me. The play begins. A player comes on under the shadow, made up of the cast-off male in a court buck, a well-set man with a bass voice. It is the ghost, the king, a king and no king, and the player is Shakespeare, who has studied Hamlet all the years of his life, which were not vanity, in order to play the part of the spectre. He speaks the words to Burbage, the young player who stands before him beyond the rack of cerecloth, calling him by a name. Hamlet, I am thy father's spirit. Bidding him list, to a son he speaks, the son of his soul, the prince, young Hamlet, and to the son of his body, Hamnet Shakespeare, who has died in Stratford, that his namesake may live forever. It is possible that the player, Shakespeare, a ghost by absence, and in the vesture of buried Denmark, a ghost by death, speaking his own words to his own son's name. Had Hamnet Shakespeare lived, he would have been Prince Hamlet's twin. Is it possible, I want to know, or probable, he did not draw or foresee the logical conclusion of those premises? You are the dispossessed son. I am the murdered father. Your mother is the guilty queen. Anne Shakespeare, born Hathaway? But this prying into the family life of a great man, Russell began impatiently. Art thou there, Truepenny? Interesting only to the parish clerk. I mean, we have the plays. I mean, when we read the poetry of King Lear, what is it to us how the poet lived? As for living, our servants can do that for us. Villiers de Isle has said, peeping and prying into green-room gossip of the day, the poet's drinking. The poet's debts, we have King Lear, and it is immortal. Mr. Best's face appealed to, agreed. Flow over them with your waves and with your waters, Manan, Maclear. How now, sirrah, that pound he lent you when you were hungry? Mary, I wanted it. Take thou this noble. Go to, you spent most of it in Georgina Johnson's bed, clergyman's daughter, Agenbite of Inwit. Do you intend to pay it back? Oh, yes. When? Now? Well, no. When, then? I paid my way. Steady on. He's from the Bay and Boyne-Water, the northeast corner. You owe it. Wait. 5 months. Molecules all change. I am other, I now. Other, I got pound. Buzz, buzz. But I, intellecty, form of forms. Am I by memory because under ever-changing forms? I that sinned and prayed and fasted, a child con me saved from pandies. I. A-E-I-O-U. Do you mean to fly in the face of the tradition of 3 centuries? John Eglinton's carping voice asked. Her ghost at least has been laid forever. She died, for literature at least, before she was born. She died, Stephen retorted, 67 years after she was born. She saw him into and out of the world. She took his first embraces, she bore his children, and she laid pennies on his eyes to keep his eyelids closed when he lay on his deathbed. Mother's deathbed, candle, the sheeted mirror. Who brought me into this world lies there, bronze-lidded, under few cheap flowers, Liliata rutilanthium. I wept alone. John Eglinton looked in the tangled glowworm of his lamp. The world believes that Shakespeare made a mistake, he said, and got out of it as quickly and as best he could. Bosh, Steven said rudely. A man of genius makes no mistakes. His errors are volitional and are the portals of discovery. Portals of discovery open to let in the Quaker librarian, soft creak-footed, bald-eared, and assiduous. A shrew, John Eglinton said shrewdly, is not a useful portal of discovery, one should imagine. What useful discovery did Socrates learn from Xanthippe? Dialectic, Stephen answered, and from his mother how to bring thoughts into the world. What he learnt from his other wife, Myrto, absent nomen, Socratidians epicidium. No man, not a woman, will ever know. But neither the midwife's lore, nor the caudal lectures saved him from the archons of Sinn Fein and their naggin of hemlock. But Anne Hathaway, Mr. Best's quiet voice said forgetfully. Yes, we seem to be forgetting her as Shakespeare himself forgot her. His look went from Bruder's beard to Carper's skull, to remind, to chide them not unkindly, then to the bald pink Lollard costard, guiltless though maligned. He had a good groatsword of wit, Stephen said, and no truant memory. He carried a memory in his wallet as he trudged to Romeville, whistling The Girl I Left Behind Me. If the earthquake did not time it, we should know where to place poor Watt, sitting in his form, the cry of hounds, the studded bridle, and her blue windows. That memory, Venus and Adonis, lay in the bedchamber of every light of love in London. Is Catherine the shrew ill-favored? Hortensio calls her young and beautiful. Do you think the writer of Antony and Cleopatra, a passionate pilgrim, had his eyes in the back of his head that he chose the ugliest doxy in all Warwickshire to lie withal? Good, he left her and gained the world of men, but his boy women are the women of a boy. Their life, thought, speech are lent them by males. He chose badly. He was chosen, it seems to me. If others have their will, Anne hath a way. By cock, she was to blame. She put the cometer on him, sweet and 26, the grey-eyed goddess who bends over the boy Adonis, stooping to conquer. As prologue to the swelling act is a bold-faced Stratford wench who tumbles in a cornfield, a lover younger than herself. And my turn? When? Come. Ryfield, Mr. Best said, brightly, gladly, raising his new book, gladly and brightly. He murmured then with blonde delight for all, between the acres of the rye, these pretty country folk would lie. Paris, the well-pleased pleaser, a tall figure in bearded homespun, rose from shadow and unveiled its cooperative watch. I am afraid I am due at the homestead. Whither away? Exploitable ground. Are you going? John Eglinton's active eyebrows asked. Shall we see you at Morse tonight? Piper is coming. Piper, Mr. Best piped. Is Piper back? Peter Piper pecked a peck of pickled peppers. I don't know if I can Thursday. We have our meeting. If I can get away in time. Yogi Bogey Box in Dawson's Chambers. Isis unveiled. Their pally book we tried to pawn. Cross-legged, under an umbral umber shoot, he thrones in Aztec logos, functioning on astral levels. Their oversoul, Mahamahatma. The fateful hermetists await the light, ripe for fellowship. Ring round about him. Louis H. Victory T. Caulfield Irwin, lotus ladies, tend them the eyes, their pineal glands aglow, filled his god, he thrones, Buddha under plantain, gulfer of souls, ungulfer, he souls, she souls, shoals of souls, engulfed with wailing Cree cries, world whirling they bewail, and quintessential triviality, for years in this flesh case a she-soul dwelt. They say we are to have a literary surprise, the Quaker librarian said, friendly and earnest. Mr. Russell, rumor has it, is gathering together a sheaf of our younger poets' verses. We are all looking forward anxiously. Anxiously, he glanced in the cone of lamplight where three faces, lighted, shone. See this, remember? Stephen looked down on a wide, headless cawbean hung on his ash-plant handle over his knee. My cask and sword, touched lightly with 2 index fingers. Aristotle's equipment, 1 or 2. Necessity is that in virtue of which is impossible that one can be otherwise. Argyle, 1 hat is 1 hat. Listen. Young Colum and Starkey. George Roberts is doing the commercial part. Longworth will give it a good puff in the Express. Oh, Willie. I liked Colum's Drover. Yes, I think he has that queer thing, genius. Do you think he has genius, really? Yeats admired his line, as in Wild Earth a Grecian vase. Did he? I hope you'll be able to come tonight. Malachi Mulligan is coming too. Moore asked him to bring Haynes. Did you hear Miss Mitchell's joke about Moore and Martin? That Moore is Martin's wild oats? Awfully clever, isn't it? They remind one of Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. Our national epic is yet to be written, Dr. Sigerson says. Moore is the man for it, a knight of the rueful continents here in Dublin, with a saffron kilt? O'Neill Russell? Oh yes, he must speak the grand old tongue. And his Dulciana? James Stevens is doing some clever sketches. We are becoming important, it seems. Cordelia, Cordoglio, Lear's loneliest daughter. Nookshotten, now your best French polish. Thank you very much, Mr. Russell, Stephen said, rising. If you will be so kind as to give the letter to Mr. Norman. Oh yes, if he considers it important, it will go in. We have so much correspondence. I understand, Stephen said. Thank you. God ild you, the pig's paper, bullock befriending. Singe has promised me an article for Dana, too. Are we going to be read? I feel we are. The Gaelic League wants something in Irish. I hope you will come round tonight. Bring Starkey. Stephen sat down. The Quaker librarian came from the leave-takers. Blushing, his mask said, Mr. Daedalus, your views are most illuminating. He creaked to and fro, tiptoeing up near by the altitude of the chopine, and covered by the noise of outgoing, said low, Is it your view, then, that she was not faithful to the poet? Alarmed face asks me, Why did he come? Courtesy or an inward light? Where there is a reconciliation, Stephen said, there must also have first been a sundering. Yes. Christfox in leather trews, hiding, a runaway in blighted tree forks from hue and cry, knowing no vixen, walking lonely in the chase. Women he won to him, tender people, a whore of Babylon, ladies of justice, bully tapsters' wives, fox and geese, and in new place, a slack dishonored body that once was comely, once as sweet, as fresh as cinnamon. Now her leaves falling, all bare, frighted of the narrow grave and unforgiven. Yes, so you think. The door closed behind the outgoer. Rest suddenly possessed the discreet vaulted cell, rest of warm and brooding air. A vestal's lamp. Here he ponders things that were not, what Caesar would have lived to do, had he believed the soothsayer, what might have been, possibilities of the possible as possible, things not known, what name Achilles bore when he lived among women. Coffin thoughts around me, in mummy cases, embalmed in spice of words. Thoth, god of libraries, a bird god, moony-crowned. And I heard the voice of that Egyptian high priest, in painted chambers loaded with tile books. They are still, once quick in the brains of men, still, but an itch of death is in them, to tell me in my ear a maudlin tale, urge me to wreak their will. Certainly, John Eglinton mused. Of all great men, he is the most enigmatic. We know nothing but that he lived and suffered. Not even so much. Others abide our question. A shadow hangs over all the rest. But Hamlet is so personal, isn't it? Mr. Best pleaded. I mean, a kind of private paper, don't you know, of his private life? I mean, I don't care a button, don't you know, who is killed or who is guilty? He rested an innocent book on the edge of the desk, smiling his defiance, his private papers in the original. Taten Bader Untier, Time and Mo Shagart. Put Burla on it, Lil John. Quoth Lil John Eglinton. I was prepared for paradoxes from what Malachi Mulligan told us, but I may as well warn you that if you want to shake my belief that Shakespeare is Hamlet, you have a stern task before you. Bear with me. Stephen withstood the bane of miscreant eyes, glinting, stern under wrinkled brows, a basilisk. E quando vede l'uomo la tosca. Messer Brunuto, I thank thee for the word. As we, or Mother Dana, weave and unweave our bodies, Stephen said, from day to day their molecules shuttled to and fro, so does the artist weave and unweave his image. And as the mole on my right breast is where it was when I was born, throughout my whole body has been woven of new stuff time after time. So through the ghost of an unquiet father, the image of the unliving son looks forth. In the intense instant of imagination, when the mind, Shelley says, is a fading coal, that which I was is that which I am, and that which in possibility I may come to be. So in the future, the sister of the past, I may see myself as I sit here, now, but by reflection, from that which then I shall be. Drummond of Hawthornden helped you at that style. Yes, Mr. Best said youngly. I feel Hamlet quite young. The bitterness might be from the father, but the passages with Ophelia are surely from the son. Has the wrong Sal by the lug. He is in my father, I am his son. That mole is the last to go, Stephen said, laughing. John Eglinton made a nothing-pleasing moe. If that were the birthmark of genius, he said, genius would be a drug in the market. The plays of Shakespeare's later years, which Renan admired so much, breathe another spirit. The spirit of reconciliation, the Quaker librarian breathed. There can be no reconciliation, Stephen said, if there has not been a sundering. Said that, if you want to know what are the events which cast their shadow over the hell of time in King Lear, Othello, Hamlet, Troilus, and Cressida, look to see when and how the shadows lift. What softens the heart of a man, shipwrecked in storms dire, tried like another Ulysses, Pericles, Prince of Tyre? Head red-cone-capped, buffeted, brine-blinded. A child, a girl, placed in his arms, Marina. The leaning of sophists towards the bypaths of Apocrypha, in a constant quantity, John Eglinton detected. The high roads are dreary, but they lead to the town. Good bacon, gone musty. Shakespeare's Bacon's wild oats. Cipher jugglers going the high roads, seekers on the great quest. What town, good masters? Mummed in names, Aeon, Magi, John Eglinton. East of the sun, west of the moon, Tir na Nog, Booty the Twain and staved. How many miles to Dublin? 70, sir. Will we be there by candlelight? Mr. Brands accepts it, Stephen said, as the first play of the closing period. Does he? And what does Mr. Sidney Lee or Mr. Simon Lazarus, as some aver his name is, say of it? Marina, Stephen said, a child of storm. Miranda, a wonder. Perdita, that which is lost. What was lost is given back to him, his daughter's child. My dearest wife, Pericles says, was like this maid. Will any man love the daughter if he has not loved the mother? The art of being a grandfather, Mr. Best gan murmur. L'art d'être grand. Will he not see reborn in her, with the memory of his own youth added, another image? Do you know what you're talking about? Love, yes, word known to all men. Amor vero, aliquid, bonum vult unda, etiaque concupiscimus. His own image to a man with that queer thing, genius is the standard of all experience, material and moral. Such an appeal will touch him. The images of other males of his blood will repel him. He will see in them grotesque attempts of nature to foretell or to repeat himself. The benign forehead of the Quaker librarian enkindled rosily with hope. I hope Mr. Daedalus will work out his theory for the enlightenment of the public. And we ought to mention another Irish commentator, Mr. George Bernard Shaw. Nor should we forget Mr. Frank Harris. His articles on Shakespeare in the Saturday Review were surely brilliant. Oddly enough, he too draws for us an unhappy relation with the dark lady of the sonnets. The favored rival is William Herbert, Earl of Pembroke. I own that if the poet must be rejected, such a rejection would seem more in harmony with, what shall I say, our notions of what ought not to have been. Felicitously he ceased, and held a meek head among them, ox egg, prize of their fray. He thous and thees her with grave husband words. Dost love, Miriam? Dost love thy man? That may be too, Stephen said. There's a saying of Goda's which Mr. Maggie likes to quote. Beware of what you wish for in youth, because you will get it in middle life. Why does he send to one who is a Buonaroba, a bay where all men ride, a maid of honor with a scandalous girlhood, a lordling to woo for him? He was himself a lord of language, and had made himself a coistrel gentleman, and he had written Romeo and Juliet. Why? Belief in himself has been untimely killed. He was overborn in a cornfield first, ryefield, I should say, and he will never be a victor in his own eyes, after nor play victorious the game of laugh and lie down. Assumed Don Giovannism will not save him. No, later undoing will undo the first undoing. The tusk of the boar has wounded him, there where love lies bleeding. If the shrew is worsted, yet there remains to her woman's invisible weapon. There is, I feel in the words, some goad of the flesh driving him into a new passion, a darker shadow of the first, darkening even his own understanding of himself. A like fate awaits him, and the two rages commingle in a whirlpool. They list, and in the porches of their ears I pour. The soul has been before stricken mortally, a poison poured in the porch of a sleeping ear. But those who are done to death and sleep cannot know the manner of their quell, unless their Creator endow their souls with that knowledge in the life to come. The poisoning and the beast with two backs that urged it, King Hamlet's ghost, could not know of were he not endowed with knowledge by his Creator. That is why the speech, his lean, unlovely English, is always turned elsewhere, backward. Ravisher and ravished, what he would, but would not, go with him from Lucrese's blood-circled ivory globes to Imogen's breast, bare, with its moles sink-spotted. He goes back, weary of the creation he has piled up to hide from himself, an old dog licking an old sore. But because loss is his gain, he passes on towards eternity an undiminished personality, untaught by the wisdom he has written or by the laws he has revealed. His beaver is up. He is a ghost, a shadow now. The wind by Elsinore's rocks, or what you will, the sea's voice, a voice heard only in the heart of him who is the substance of this shadow, the Son, consubstantial with the Father. Amen, was responded from the doorway. Hast thou found me, O mine enemy? Entreact. A ribald face sullen as a dean's, Buck Mulligan came forward, then blithe and motley towards the greeting of their smiles, my telegram. You were speaking of the gaseous vertebrae, if I mistake not, he asked of Stephen. Primrose vested, he greeted gaily with his doffed Panama, as with a bauble. They make him welcome. Was du verlagst wirst du noch dienen. Brood of mockers, Photius, Pseudo-Malachi, Johann most. He who himself begot Midler the Holy Ghost, and himself sent himself, Agenbire, between himself and others, who put upon by his fiends, stripped and whipped, was nailed like bat to barn door, starved on cross tree. Who let him bury, stood up, harrowed hell, fared into heaven, and there these 1900 years sitteth on the right hand of his own self, but yet shall come in the latter day, to doom the quick and dead, when all the quick shall be dead already. Gloria in excelsis Deo. He lifts his hands, veils fall, oh flowers, bells with bells acquiring. Yes, indeed, the Quaker librarian said, a most instructive discussion. Mr. Mulligan, I'll be bound, has his theory too of the play and of Shakespeare. All sides of life should be represented. He smiled on all sides equally. Buck Mulligan thought, puzzled. Shakespeare? He said. I seem to know the name. A flying sunny smile rayed in his loose features. To be sure, he said, remembering brightly, the chap that writes like Synge. Mr. Best turned to him. Haynes missed you, he said. Did you meet him? He'll see you after the DBC. He's gone to Gill's to buy Hyde's Love Songs of Connacht. I came through the museum, Buck Mulligan said. Was he here? The bard's fellow countrymen, John Eglinton answered, are rather tired, perhaps, of our brilliancies of theorizing. I hear that an actress played Hamlet for the 408th time last night in Dublin. Vining held that the prince was a woman. Has no one made him out to be an Irishman? Judge Barton, I believe, is searching for some clues. He swears, His Highness, not his lordship, by St. Patrick. The most brilliant of all is that story of Wilde's, Mr. Betts said, lifting his brilliant notebook, that portrait of Mr. W.H., where he proves that the sonnets were written by a William Hughes, a man all Hughes. For Willie Hughes, is it not? The Quaker librarian asked. Or Huey Wills, Mr. William himself. W.H., who am I? I mean, for Willie Hughes, Mr. Best said, amending his gloss easily. Of course, it's all paradox, don't you know? Hughes and Hughes and Hughes, the color. But it's so typical, the way he works it out. It's the very essence of Wilde, don't you know, the light touch. His glance touched their faces lightly as he smiled, a blonde ephebe, tame essence of Wilde. You're darned witty. 3 drams of Usquebaugh you drank with Dan Deasy's ducats. How much did I spend? Oh, a few shillings. For a plump of pressman, humor wet and dry. Wit. You would give your 5 wits for youth's proud livery, he pranks in. Lineaments of gratified desire. There may be mo. Take her for me, impairing time, Jove. A cool, rut time send them. Yeah, turtle dover. Eve, naked, wet-bellied sin, a snake coils her, fangs and kiss. Do you think it's only a paradox? The Quaker librarian was asking. The mocker is never taken seriously when he is most serious. They talked seriously of Mocker's seriousness. Buck Mulligan's again heavy face eyed Stefan a while. Then, his head wagging, he came near, drew a folded telegram from his pocket, his mobile lips red, smiling with new delight. "Telegram," he said. "Wonderful inspiration, telegram. A palpable." He sat on the corner of the unlit desk, reading aloud joyfully. The sentimentalist is he who would enjoy without incurring the immense debtorship for a thing done. Signed, Daedalus. "Where did you launch it from? The Kips? No. College Green. Have you drunk the 4 quid? The aunt is going to call on your unsubstantial father. Telegram. Malachi Mulligan. The Ship, Lower Abbey Street. Oh, you peerless mummer. Oh, you priestified kinchite." Joyfully he thrust message and envelope into a pocket, but keened in a querulous brogue. "It's what I'm telling you, Mr. Honey. It's queer and sick we were, Haynes and myself. The time himself brought it in. 'Twas murmur we did for a gallus potion would rouse a friar. I'm thinking, and he limp with leching. And we 1 hour and 2 hours and 3 hours in Connery sitting civil waiting for pints apiece." He wailed, "And we to be here, Mavron, and you to be unbeknownst sending us your conglomerations the way we too have our tongues out a yard long, like the drouthy clerics do, be fainting for a pussful." Stefan laughed. Quickly, warningly, Buck Mulligan bent down. "The tramper Singe is looking for you," he said, "to murder you. He heard you pissed on his hall door in Glasgow. He's out in Pampooties to murder you." "Me!" Stefan exclaimed. "That was your contribution to literature." Buck Mulligan gleefully bent back, laughing to the dark eavesdropping ceiling. "Murder you," he laughed. "Harsh gargoyle face that warred against me over our mess of hash of lights in Rue St. Andres des Arts. In words of words, for words, palabras, Oisin with Patrick, Fawnman he met in Clamart Woods, brandishing a wine bottle. Se vendredi saint, murthering Irish, his image wandering he met, I mine, I met a fool in the forest." "Mr. Leicester," an attendant said from the door ajar, "in which everyone can find his own. So Mr. Justice Madden, in his diary of Master William Silence, has found the hunting terms." "Yes? What is it?" "There's a gentleman here, sir," the attendant said, coming forward and offering a card, "from the Freeman. He wants to see the files of the Kilkenny people for last year." Certainly. Is the gentleman—" He took the eager card, glanced, not saw, laid down, unglanced, looked, asked, creaked, asked, "Is he? Oh, there." Brisk in a Gilliard he was off. In the daylit corridor he talked with voluble pains of zeal, in duty bound, most fair, most kind, most honest Broadbrim. "This gentleman? Freeman's Journal? Kilkenny people? To be sure. Good day, Sir Kilkenny. We have certainly." A patient silhouette waited, listening. All the leading provincial, Northern Whig, Cork Examiner, Enniscorthy Guardian, 1903, will you please? Evans, conduct this gentleman. If you just follow the Atten, or please allow me, this way, please, sir. Voluble, dutiful, he led the way to all the provincial papers, a bowing dark figure following his hasty heels. The door closed. "The Sheeny!" Buck Mulligan cried. He jumped up and snatched the card. "What's his name? Ikey Moses? Bloom?" He rattled on. "Jehovah, collectors of prepuces, is no more. I found him over in the museum where I went to hail the foam-born Aphrodite, the Greek mouth that has never been twisted in prayer. Every day we must do homage to her. Life of life, thy lips enkindle." Suddenly he turned to Stefan. "He knows you. He knows your old fellow. Oh, I fear me, he is Greeker than the Greeks. His pale Galilean eyes were upon her mesial groove, Venus Callipyge. Oh, the thunder of those loins, the god pursuing the maiden hid." "We want to hear more," John Eglinton decided with Mr. Best's approval. "We begin to be interested in Miss S. Till now we had thought of her, if at all, as a patient Griselda, Penelope stay at home." "Anasthenes, pupil of Gorgias," Stefan said, "took the palm of beauty from Kyrios Menelaus Brudum. Argive, Helen, the wooden mare of Troy in whom a score of heroes slept, and handed it to poor Penelope. 20 years he lived in London, and during part of that time he drew a salary equal to that of a Lord Chancellor of Ireland. His life was rich. His art, more than the art of feudalism, as Walt Whitman called it, is the art of surfeit. Hot herring pies, green mugs of sack, honey sauces, sugar of roses, marchpane, gooseberried pigeons, Ringo candies. Sir Walter Raleigh, when they arrested him, had 500,000 francs on his back, including a pair of fancy stays. The Gombeen woman, Eliza Tudor, had underlinen enough to vie with her of Sheba. 20 years he dallied there between conjugal love and its chaste delights, and scortatory love and its foul pleasures. You know Manningham's story of the burgher's wife who bade Dick Burbage to bed her after she had seen him in Richard III, and how Shakespeare, overhearing, without more ado about nothing, took the cow by the horns, and when Burbage came knocking at the gate, answered the Capin's blankets. William the Conqueror came before Richard III, and the gay Lakin, Mistress Fitton, mount and cry oh, and his dainty bird's knees, Lady Penelope Rich, a clean, quality woman, is suited for a player, and the punks of the Bankside a penny a time. Que la reine, encore vinsu, nous ferons des petites cochonneries, Minette, tu veux? The height of fine society, and Sir William Davenant of Oxford's mother, with her cup of canary for a cockanary. Buck Mulligan, his pious eyes upturned, prayed. Blessed Margaret Mary Anycock, and Harry of Six Wives' Daughter, and other lady friends from neighbors' seats, as Lon Tennyson, gentleman poet, sings. But all those 20 years, what do you suppose poor Penelope in Stratford was doing behind the diamond panes? Do and do, thing done, in a rosary of Fetter Lane and Gerard, herbalist, he walks, greyed auburn, an azured harebell like her veins, lids of Juno's eyes, violets. He walks, one life is all, one body, do but do, afar in a reek of lust and squalor, hands are laid on whiteness. Buck Mulligan rapped John Eglinton's desk sharply. Whom do you suspect? He challenged. Say that he is the spurned lover in the sonnets, once spurned, twice spurned, but the court wanton spurned him for a lord, his dear my love. Love that dare not speak its name, as an Englishman, you mean, John sturdy Eglinton put in, he loved a lord. Old wall where sudden lizards flash, at Sherrington I watched them. It seems so, Stephen said, when he wants to do for him and for all other and singular uneared wombs the holy office of ostler does for the stallion. Maybe, like Socrates, he had a midwife to mother as he had shrew to wife. But she, the giglet wanton, did not break a bed vow. 2 deeds are rank in that ghost's mind, a broken vow and the dull-brained yokel on whom her favor has declined, deceased husband's brother. Sweet Anne, I take it, was hot in the blood, once a wooer, twice a wooer. Stephen turned boldly in his chair. The proof of burden is with you, not with me, he said, frowning. If you deny that in the 5th scene of Hamlet he has branded her with infamy, tell me why there is no mention of her during the 34 years between the day she married him and the day she buried him. All those women saw their men down and under. Mary, her goodman John, Anne, her poor dear Willen. When he went and died on her, raging that he was the first to go, Joan, her 4 brothers, Judith, her husband and all her sons, Susan, her husband too, while Susan's daughter Elizabeth, to use granddaddy's words, wed her second, having killed her first. Oh yes, mention there is, in the years when he was living richly in royal London, to pay a debt she had to borrow 40 shillings from her father's shepherd. Explain you then, explain the swan song too, wherein he has commended her to posterity. He faced their silence. To whom thus, Eglinton? You mean the will, but that has been explained, I believe, by jurists. She was entitled to her widow's dower. At common law, his legal knowledge was great, our judges tell us. Him Satan fleers, mocker, and therefore he left out her name. From the first draft, but he did not leave out the presents for his granddaughter, for his daughters, for his sister, for his old cronies in Stratford, and in London, and therefore when he was urged, as I believe, to name her, he left her his second best. Bed, left her his, second best, left her his, bestabbed, second best, left a bed. Whoa. Pretty country folk have few chatels, then, John Eglinton observed, as they have still our pleasant plays are true to type. He was a rich country gentleman, Stephen said, with a coat of arms and landed estate at Stratford and a house in Ireland Yard, a capitalist shareholder, a bill promoter, a tithe farmer. Why did he not leave her his best bed if he wished her to snore away the rest of her nights in peace? It is clear that there were two beds, a best and a second best. Mr. Second Best, Best said finally. Separatio amens et alamo. Bettered Buck Mulligan and smiled on. Antiquity mentions famous beds. Second Eglinton puckered, bed smiling. Let me think. Antiquity mentions that Staggerite's school urchin and bald heathen sage, Stephen said, who then, dying in exile, frees and endows his slaves, pays tribute to his elders, wills to be laid in earth near the bones of his dead wife, and bids his friend to be kind to an old mistress. Don't forget Nell Gwyn Hercules, and let her live in his villa. Do you mean he died so? Mr. Best asked with slight concern. I mean, he died dead drunk, Buck Mulligan capped. A quart of ale is a dish for a king. Oh, I must tell you what Dowden said. What? Asked Best to Glinton. William Shakespeare and Company Limited, the People's William, for lower terms apply E. Dowden, Highfield House. Lovely, Buck Mulligan suspired amorously. I asked him what he thought of the charge of pederasty brought against the bard. He lifted his hands and said, all we can say is that life ran very high in those days. Lovely. Catamite. The sense of beauty leads us astray, said beautiful in sadness, Best to Ugling Eglinton. Steadfast John replied severe, the doctor can tell us what those words mean. You cannot eat your cake and have it. Sayest thou so? Will they wrest from us, from me, the palm of beauty? And the sense of property, Stephen said. He drew Shylock out of his own long pocket. The son of a malt jobber and moneylender, he was himself a corn jobber and moneylender, with 10 tods of corn hoarded in the famine riots. His borrowers are no doubt those divers of worship mentioned by Shettle Falstaff, who reported his uprightness of dealing. He sued a fellow player for the price of a few bags of malt, and exacted his pound of flesh and interest for every money lent. How else could Aubrey's ostler and callboy get rich quick? All events brought grist to his mill. Shylock chimes with the Jew baiting that followed the hanging and quartering of the Queen's leech Lopez, his Jew's heart being plucked forth while the Sheeny was yet alive. Hamlet and Macbeth with the coming to the throne of the Scotch philosophister, with a turn for witch roasting. The Lost Armada is his jeer and love's labor lost. His pageants, the histories, sail full-bellied on a tide of Maffican enthusiasm. Warwickshire, Jesuits are tried, and we have a Porter's theory of equivocation. The Sea Venture comes home from Bermudas, and the play Renan admired is written with Patsy Caliban, our American cousin. The sugared sonnets follow Sidney's. As for Fay Elizabeth, otherwise Carity Bess, the gross virgin who inspired the Merry Wives of Windsor, let some Mynheer from Almany grope his life long for deep-hid meanings in the depths of the buck-basket. I think you're getting on very nicely. Just mix up a mixture of philological, mingo, mixy, mictum, mingery. Prove that he was a Jew, John Eglinton dared. Expectantly, your Dean of Studies holds he was a Holy Roman. Supplementandus sum. He was made in Germany, Stephen replied, as the champion French polisher of Italian scandals. A myriad-minded man, Mr. Best reminded. Coleridge called him myriad-minded. Amplius in societate humana hoc est maxima necessarium ut sit amicitia inter multus. St. Thomas, Stephen began. Ora pro nobis, Monk Mulligan groaned, sinking to a chair. There he keened a wailing rune. Pogue Mahone, Acushla Macri. It's destroyed we are from this day. It's destroyed we are surely. All smiled their smiles. St. Thomas, Stephen smiling said, whose gorbelied works I enjoy reading in the original, writing of incest from a standpoint different from that of the new Viennese school Mr. McGee spoke of, likens it in his wise and curious way to an avarice of the emotions. He means that the love so given to one near in blood is covetously withheld from some stranger who it may be hungers for it. Jews whom Christians tax with avarice are all of races the most given to intermarriage. Accusations are made in anger. The Christian laws which build up the hordes of the Jews, for whom, as for the Lollards, storm was shelter, bound their affections, too, with hoops of steel. Whether these be sins or virtues, old Nobodaddy will tell us at doomsday leet, but a man who holds so tightly to what he calls his rights over what he calls his debts will hold tightly also to what he calls his rights over her whom he calls his wife. No, sir, smile neighbor shall covet his ox, or his wife, or his manservant, or his maidservant, or his jackass. Or his ginny ass, Buck Mulligan antiphoned. Gentle Will is being roughly handled, gentle Mr. Best said gently. Which will? Gagged sweetly Buck Mulligan. We are getting mixed. The will to live, John Eglinton philosophized. For poor Anne, Will's widow, is the will to die. Requiescat, Stephen prayed. What of all the will to do? It has vanquished long ago. She lies laid out in stark stiffness in that second best bed, the mobled queen. Even though you prove that a bed is in those days was as rare as a motor car is now, and that its carvings were the wonder of 7 parishes. In old age she takes up with gospelers. No one stayed with her at New Place, and drank a quart of sack the town council paid for her. But in which bed he slept he'd skills not to ask. And heard she had a soul. She read or had read to her his chapbooks, preferring them to merry wives, and loosing her nightly waters on the Jordan. She thought over hooks and eyes for believers' breeches, and the most spiritual snuff-box to make the most devout souls sneeze. Venus had twisted her lips in prayer, agambite of inwit, remorse of conscience. It is an age of exhausted whoredom groping for its god. History shows that to be true, inquit Eglintonus chronologus, the ages succeed one another, but we have it on high authority that a man's worst enemies shall be those of his own house and family. I feel that Russell is right. What do we care for his wife or father? I should say that only family poets have family lives. Falstaff was not a family man. I feel that the fat knight is his supreme creation. Lean, he lay back, shy, deny thy kindred, the inqua guid. Shy, supping with the godless, he sneaks the cup. A sire in Yultonian Antrim bade it to him. Visits him there on quarter days. Mr. Maggie, sir, there's a gentleman to see you. Me? Says he's your father, sir. Give me my word's worth. Enter Maggie Moore Matthew, a rugged, rough, rug-headed kern, in Strausers, with a button codpiece. His nether stalks bemired with clouber of 10 forests, a wand of wilding in his hand. Your own? He knows your old fellow, the widower. Hurriedly to her squalid death lair from gay Paris on his quayside I touched his hand. The voice, new warmth, speaking. Mr. Bob Kinney is attending her. The eyes that wish me well but do not know me. A father, Stephen said, battling against hopelessness is a necessary evil. He wrote the play in the months that followed his father's death. If you hold that he, a graying man with 2 marriageable daughters, with 35 years of life, nel mezzo del camin de nostra vita, with 50 of experience, is the beardless undergraduate from Wittenberg, then you must hold that his 70-year-old mother is the lustful queen. No, the corpse of John Shakespeare does not walk the night. From hour to hour it rots and rots. He rests disarmed of fatherhood, having devised that mystical estate upon his son. Boccaccio's Caladrino was the first and last man who felt himself with child. Fatherhood, in the sense of conscious begetting, is unknown to man. It is a mystical estate, an apostolic succession, from only begetter to only begotten. On that mystery, and not on the Madonna which the cunning Italian intellect flung to the mob of Europe, the Church is founded, and founded irremovably, because founded, like the world, macro and microcosm, upon the void. Upon incertitude, upon unlikelihood, amor matrice, subjective and objective genitive, may be the only true thing in life. Paternity may be a legal fiction. Who is the father of any son that any son should love him, or he any son? What the hell are you driving at? I know, shut up, blast you, I have reasons. Amplius adhuc iterum postea. Are you condemned to do this? They are sundered by a bodily shame so steadfast that the criminal annals of the world, stained with all other incests and bestialities, hardly record its breach. Sons with mothers, sires with daughters, lesbic sisters, loves that dare not speak their name. Nephews with grandmothers, jailbirds with keyholes, queens with prize bulls. The son unborn mars beauty. Born he brings pain, divides affection, increases care. He is a new male. His growth is his father's decline, his youth his father's envy, his friend his father's enemy. In Rue Monsieur le Prince, I thought it. What links them in nature? An instant of blind rut. Am I a father? if I were? Shrunken, uncertain hand. Sibelius, the African, subtlest heresiarch of all the beasts of the field, held that the Father was himself his own Son. The bulldog of Aquin, with whom no word shall be impossible, refutes him. Well, if the Father who has not a Son be not a Father, can the Son who has not a Father be a Son? When Rutland Bacon, Southampton Shakespeare, or other poet of the same name in the Comedy of Errors, wrote Hamlet, he was not the father of his own son merely, but being no more a son, he was and felt himself the father of all his race, the father of his own grandfather, the father of his unborn grandson, who by the same token never was born, for nature, as Mr. McGee understands her, abhors perfection. Eglinton's eyes, quick with pleasure, looked up shy brightly, gladly glancing a merry Puritan through the twisted eglantine. Flatter, rarely, but flatter. Himself his own father, son Mulligan told himself. Wait, I am big with child, I have an unborn child in my brain. Pallas Athena, a play, the play's the thing, let me parturiate. He clasped his paunch brow with both birth-aiding hands. As for his family, Stephen said, his mother's name lives in the forest of Arden. Her death brought him the scene with Volumnia and Coriolanus. His Boyson's death is the death scene of young Arthur and King John. Hamlet, the Black Prince, and Hamnet Shakespeare. Who the girls in The Tempest and Pericles and Winter's Tale are we know. Who Cleopatra, fleshpot of Egypt, and Cressid and Venus are we may guess. There is another member of his family who is recorded. The plot thickens, John Eglinton said. The Quaker librarian, quaking, tiptoed in, quake, his mask, quake with haste, quake, quack. Door closed, cell, day. They list 3, they. I, you, he, they. Come, mess. Stephen, he had 3 brothers, Gilbert, Edmund, Richard. Gilbert, in his old age, told some cavaliers he got a pass for nowt from Maester Gatherer one time, mass he did, and he'd seen his brood, Maester Wool, the playwriter up in Lunnon, in a wrastling play, with a man on's back. The playhouse sausage filled Gerbert's soul. He's nowhere, but an Edmund and a Richard are recorded in the works of Sweet William. Maggie Glen John, names, what's in a name? Best, that is my name, Richard, don't you know? I hope you are going to say a good word for Richard, don't you know, for my sake? Laughter. Buck Mulligan, piano, diminuendo. Then outspoke Medical Dick to his comrade Medical Davy. Stephen, in his trinity of black wills, the villain Shakebags, Iago, Richard Crookback, Edmund, and King Lear. 2 bear the wicked uncle's names. Nay, that last play was written or being written while his brother Edmund lie dying in Southwark. Best, I hope Edmund is going to catch it. I don't want Richard my name. Laughter. Quakerleister, a tempo, but he that filches from me my good name. Stephen. Stringendo, he has hidden his own name, a fair name. William in the plays, a super here, a clown there, as a painter of old Italy set his face in a dark corner of his canvas. He has revealed it in the sonnets,